Shalom, and welcome to Walking the Walk, a linguistic analysis of the terms in Psalm 119. Today we will be on part 8, and we're going to discuss the word that is translated as word. The Colonel says you can't understand Hebrew unless you know what it says. Hebrew is constructed in such a way that words with similar letters have related meanings. By examining the related roots of each word, we come to a better understanding of what Hebrew words mean. The word which is translated word or thing, matter or promise, in the Hebrew is davar. It's Strong's number 1697. It is usually translated as the word logos in the Greek Septuagint, and probably you are familiar with this word from John 1. In the beginning was the logos. Here is a list of verses in Psalm 119 where you will find this word davar. Genesis 11:1, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. This is also the word davar. Genesis 12:17, and Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. We understand that Yahweh spoke the world into existence, and so when a word is spoken, it can become a thing. In this case, it's sort of an issue. We're going to see it translated because of the matter of, and this is because of not what Abram's wife said, but because of the issue, because of the matter that she was his wife. Genesis 15:1, after these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abraham, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. So a davar is a thing, and it's also a word. Genesis 18:25, that be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? It's a manner that is there is this issue, there is this way of acting. It's this thing that's being referred to. Genesis 20:11, and Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. It's not for the words that she spoke, but it is for the matter of his wife, the fact that, again, that she is his wife. Job 4:2, if we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? But who can withhold himself from speaking? In other words, we're going to have words. We're going to speak one with another. Job 26:14, lo, these are parts of his ways, but how little a portion is heard of him. But the thunder of his power, who can understand? What part of him, what small amount of his word, what small thing do we hear from the Lord? 2 Kings 15:15, and the rest of the acts of Shallum and his conspiracy which he made, behold, they are written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. The word which is translated Chronicles is also Devarim, it's things. You know that the book of Chronicles in Hebrew is called Divrei Hayamim, the things of the days, the acts of history. This is the name for Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim. So in every case when it talks about Chronicles, it's talking about Devarim, things which came about because they were acts, because they were spoken first as words from the king. Exodus 34:28, and he was there with the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Again, it's words, and in fact, the word here, the idea of 10 commandments was never translated as the word commandments until the Geneva Bible came out in 1585. Before that, it was always translated as words. Now, the words of Yahweh are, in fact, commandments. When he gives you something to do, you should be obedient and do it. 1 Samuel 15:11. It repenteth me that I have set Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto Yahweh all night. Again, the words that are spoken by Yahweh are commandments. Also the words that are spoken by an earthly king. In Esther 1:12, but the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment, at his word, what he said by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Another related word with the same root is dever, and this means a plague or an epidemic. Exodus 9:3, behold, the hand of Yahweh is upon thy cattle, which is in the field, upon the horses, upon the asses, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous murrain. Murrain is not a word that we come into contact frequently. It is a word, an Old English word, that means a plague on cattle. In those days, they were not able to diagnose all kind of different diseases. And this is the word that's used when we recite the 10 plagues. It's the 5th plague, the cattle disease. 2 Samuel 24:15. So Yahweh sent a pestilence upon Israel from the morning even to the time appointed, and there died of the people from Dan even to Beersheba 70,000 men. Again, if Yahweh speaks something, it can cause something to come into existence in terms of a curse. The word devar is also used one time to mean rafts in 1 Kings 5:23. In the King James, you'll find it verse 5:9. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon unto the sea, and I will convey them by sea in floats unto the place that thou shalt appoint me, and will cause them to be discharged there, and thou shalt receive them, and thou shalt accomplish my desire in giving food for my household. What joins all these ideas together is the idea of joining things together. When we have a word, it joins the letters and sounds together to make a meaning of something specific. This is a davar. When we put those sounds together and we speak it into existence, that word can form something in our physical plane. That is davar. Binding the logs together is where we get the idea of a raft. And we're going to see this meaning continue in the related words. Before we leave the actual root of Dalet Bet Resh, I want to show you something from the Aramaic. In Aramaic, the Dalet becomes a prefix that means of or from. If you are familiar with the Passover Haggadah, you know there's one prayer that's in Aramaic. It's called Halach Ma'anya. This is the bread of affliction. And as you read through it, you see places where this dalet is used for of. It talks about Ar'ad de Mitzrayim, Ar'ad de Yisrael. And this means the land of Israel, the land of Egypt. Bar itself in Aramaic means the sun. And just as we were talking about in the beginning, how the davar is the logos, and the logos is Yeshua, we see this picture in Aramaic of this word davar, meaning of the sun. A word which is related, we've talked many times about how the mem will make a noun out of a verb root. We have midbar, which means wilderness, pasture, or desert. Many times people think that the wilderness that the Israelites were wandering in for 40 years was a desert, but that is not true, and we'll see that. Genesis 16:7, and the angel of Yahweh found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way of Shur, talking about Hagar. Exodus 3:1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. There is no way that anybody can feed a flock of sheep in a desert. It is the backside of the wilderness that Moses took his flock to. Psalm 65:13, which is in King James verse 12, they drop upon the pastures of the wilderness, and the little hills rejoice on every side. The idea behind that is that they're dropping richness or fatness onto the wilderness. It's not a desert, but it can be a desert, as in Isaiah 32:15. Until the Spirit be poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness, which is now barren, will be a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be counted for a forest. One thing that we can see in Hebrew grammar is that midbar, which means wilderness, also reads the word he is speaking, midaber. Yahweh gathers you into the wilderness so he can midaber, to speak to you. Another related word is Devorah. We have a judge, a female judge named Devorah, and this word means bee, a little animal. Judges 14:8. And after a time he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. These are physical bees, and this is in the story of Samson. In Isaiah 7:18, and it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall hiss for the fly that is in the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. This is not one physical little animal, but it's a metaphorical use of the idea of an animal that's coming to sting somebody, to hurt the people. One other related root is the word devere, and this is a special word. It's not used very often. It refers to the Holy of Holies, as we'll see from the description, but it's always translated as oracle in the King James. We usually think of the oracle, maybe of the Oracle of Delphi, which is in Greece, and it's a pagan place, but an oracle is any word that comes from any divine being. And here in the King James, they're thinking of the words that come from our Lord Yahweh. 1 Kings 6:16, and he built 20 cubits on the sides of the house, both the floor and the walls with boards of cedar. He even built them for it within, even for the oracle, even for the most holy place. This is the Holy of Holies. This is talking about Solomon building the temple. Psalm 28:2, hear the voice of my supplications when I cry unto thee, when I lift up my hands towards thy holy oracle, in the direction of the Holy of Holies, which inside is the Ark of the Covenant, which inside is the word of Yahweh. So the idea of devere is that is the place where Yahweh is going to speak from, between the cherubim on the atonement cover inside the Holy of Holies. We're going to look at some cognate roots of davar, and the first of these is tafar. We see the dalet and tav are both dentals, one is voiced and one is voiceless, and also the vet and the fe are voiced and voiceless labials that can trade places. The other cognate root is dor. The bet and the vav, as you know, both can be pronounced vav. In this case, Dalet Vav Resh, we don't actually hear that Vav sound. Tafar means to sow. Genesis 3:7. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. Again, the idea of putting something together, as we talked about with davar, putting sounds together to make a word, putting words together to make a sentence, and here sewing things together. Ecclesiastes 3:7, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, a time to speak. The word dor means a generation, an age, a specific period as a period of a man's life, period of time. Or we'll see that it means a habitation, to live someplace. Genesis 6:9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. We have two different words for generations here. The first one is toldot, and it comes from the idea of being born. So in the terms of his descendants, his forebears, we're going to have all the list of people that were born, which is only 10 up until Noah, all his forebears. The second, where it says perfect in his generation, this is the word dor, and that means in his age, in his period of life. And we know that he is the only one that was seen fit to be saved on the ark of all the people that were living at the same time as he is. And this is where the dor and davar meanings kind of merge, where God brings together a certain group of people to be contemporary, to live at the same time. In Genesis 15:16, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Yahweh is talking to Abraham in his sleep, telling him the prophecy of how the people will go down into Egypt. The fourth generation, the fourth group, contemporaneous group of people that lives together in Egypt. In Leviticus 3:17, it shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. This is a permanent law from Yahweh for each group of people from generation to generation. Numbers 15:15, one ordinance shall be for you of the congregation, and also for the stranger that sojourneth with you, an ordinance forever in your generations. As ye are, so shall the stranger be before Yahweh. No questions about that. Exodus 1:6, and Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation, all the group of people that were living contemporaneously. Psalm 84:10, well-known verse. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. So that idea of habitation comes from dor, from generation. Dor also has two other meanings. One is a ball in the sense of being round, and when we think about things going from generation to generation, this shows us a round cycle. Isaiah 22:18, he will surely violently turn and toss thee like a ball into a large country. There shalt thou die, and the chariots of thy glory shall be the shame of thy Lord's house. Dor can also be a campfire. It's still used in modern Hebrew. Medurah is the campfire. I think that's the word that appears in Ezekiel 24:9. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, woe to the bloody city. I will even make a pile for fire great. Again, the idea of gathering things together, also the idea of roundness, comes into this meaning, Medurah, campfire. What does the word mean in the spiritual life of a believer? The spoken word causes something to exist on a physical plane. Yahweh spoke the world into existence, and we're also taught about the power of the tongue to bring life and death. We need to guard our own words as well as the words of the Lord, because we can bring life or death with the things that we say. Yeshua is the Word made flesh. We understand that from John 1. He is the Logos, and the word davar is dabar, of the Son. The word of Yahweh is for all generations. We are gathered into the wilderness to hear the word of Yahweh. We go to the midbar so he can midaber, speak with us. The word of Yahweh, who is Yeshua, holds the world together, as we read in Colossians 1:16 through 17. For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or power. All things were created by him and for him, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. This word consist in the Greek is synestimi. And it has the idea behind it also of uniting all the parts into one whole. He is what holds everything together. I'm sure as you meditate on these different ideas, many other thoughts will come to you about what does the word mean. In the meantime, tasimit ha'inayim al hashamayim, keep your eye on the sky, your redemption draweth nigh. Shalom.